They said I was next in line. For 3 years. I led the numbers, the clients, the wins. But when the big day came, they gave my promotion. To the guy who golfed with the CEO's brother. I didn't cry, I didn't argue. I just made a few calls. 6 months later, every executive in that meeting now reports to me. It was supposed to be me. Everyone knew it. I'd led the team through 2 acquisitions, survived 3 reorgs, and pulled our East Coast division out of the red twice. People didn't just respect me, they depended on me. Clients called me directly. Analysts followed my reports like gospel. I was the one staying late, the one fixing the messes no one else wanted to touch. And for 3 years, 3 long years, my boss, Greg, kept saying, "You're next. Danielle, be patient. It's just not the right time yet." I was patient, I was loyal. I skipped vacations. I trained new hires. I handled that client in Boston that made the last manager cry in the parking lot. So, when the quarterly meeting came, the one where they always announce promotions, I wore my best navy blazer, put on the lipstick I saved for days like this, and waited. My phone buzzed. I looked down. It was a calendar invite. Quarterly leadership announcement, 11 a.m., main conference room. My stomach fluttered. This was it. I walked in, sat at the edge of the table just like always because I believed in earning your place, not claiming it. The CEO walked in, the board members followed. They smiled, they made small talk. Then the HR director stood up and said, "We're pleased to announce a new vice president of strategic growth." My heart stopped. Congratulations to Tyler Graves. The clapping started, but in my head only static. Tyler? The guy who spends half his day networking on the golf course. The guy who forwards my reports with his name on them. The guy who couldn't name 3 of our biggest accounts if you spotted him too. I couldn't move. I just stared at the table. The wood grain blurred, my ears rang. And then he had the nerve to thank me. Tyler walked up, shook Greg's hand, and said I wouldn't be here without Danielle. She's been like my right hand. Right hand, funny, because his left hand was always free to take credit. I didn't say a word, didn't blink. Didn't even turn my head when the applause ended. I just stood up and walked out. And in that hallway between the conference room and my office, something changed. Not just inside me, but in how I saw all of it. The loyalty, the waiting, the promises. They weren't building me up. They were using me as a ladder. And now that Tyler had climbed to the top, I was supposed to stay right where I was. So I went back to my desk, closed the door, and opened a new document. Not a resignation letter. A plan. I didn't go home that night. I stayed in the office, lights off, the glow of my monitor keeping me company. Everyone else went out to celebrate. The whole team, Tyler's team now, was drinking cocktails on the rooftop bar downtown. I wasn't invited. Didn't matter. Because while they were sipping champagne, I was digging into every file, every contract, every bonus statement from the last 3 years. I wasn't looking for gossip. I was looking for patterns. And I found them. Expense reports that didn't match meetings on the calendar. Performance reviews copy-pasted from previous quarters. A bonus structure that somehow always favored Tyler even when our numbers were identical. I took notes, screenshots, time-stamped emails, archived files, and then I did something I hadn't done in years. I called my old professor from Georgetown. He picked up on the first ring. "Danielle," he said, surprised, "I haven't heard from you since you aced my corporate ethics class." I smiled for the first time all day. We met for coffee the next morning. Not in DSC, too risky. We met in Alexandria, near the waterfront, where no one from the office would be. I told him everything, and when I finished, he leaned back and said 6 words that stayed with me. "You don't need revenge, you need leverage." That afternoon, I enrolled in the executive MBA program. It would take me 12 months. 12 months of late nights, early mornings, and absolute silence. I didn't tell anyone, not even my sister. During the day, I smiled, nodded, sat through Tyler's awful presentations and Greg's patronizing check-ins. At night, I studied financial law, corporate restructuring, mergers, shareholder rights. I learned who really controlled our company. It wasn't Greg or even the CEO. It was the board. 7 members, 2 were founders, 3 were shareholders, and the last 2, friends of the CEO. No stake, no power, just rubber stamps. They looked legitimate on paper, but they weren't protected by corporate law. And just like that, I found my opening, I started buying shares. Not in my name, of course. I had a friend from business school, Emily. She was launching her own investment firm in Maryland. We made a deal. I provided the capital. She bought the shares. Silent, clean, undeniable. Within 5 months, we held 12% of Bridgeford Capital. By month 8, we hit 18%. And then I got an unexpected email. One of the founding board members, Peter, was retiring. They were looking for replacements. Greg asked if I'd be willing to help source qualified candidates. Of course, I replied. I recommended 2. One was a brilliant economist I met during my MBA. The other was a corporate compliance lawyer from Boston who owed me a favor. I made sure their resumes were stellar. I also made sure they understood one thing if I called on them for a vote. They'd pick up the phone. It wasn't about control, not yet. It was about options. A chessboard slowly being set. Meanwhile, Tyler was busy planning another retreat. He loved off-sites, anything to get out of actual work. He called me into his office one afternoon. I want you to take lead on logistics, he said, grinning. Like I was still his assistant. I smiled back. Of course. I booked the hotel, arranged the transport, even drafted his opening speech. He never noticed that the file I sent to his assistant had a paragraph copied from a confidential report, one that wasn't supposed to be public. When he presented it word for word, Greg pulled me aside afterward. Did you write that part? I shook my head. I sent him the outline, but he added some slides. I didn't want to overstep. He nodded. Later that night, Greg sent me a one-line email. Let's talk Monday. That Monday, we didn't talk. Because I was on a flight to New York, a shareholder summit. Emily's firm had officially passed the 20% mark. And under Bridgeford bylaws, that gave us something very special. The right to call an extraordinary meeting. Most people didn't know that. But I did, because I'd read every page of the founding documents. I spent the next 2 weeks preparing the paperwork. I didn't use Bridgeford email, didn't use my name. Everything went through Emily's firm. When the notice arrived at corporate headquarters, Greg nearly choked. An emergency board meeting. To vote on a structural proposal, no one knew who called it. No one suspected me. They should have, because I knew where every crack in that company lived. And I was done patching them up for other people. I was ready to break the whole thing wide open. I remember standing in my apartment that night barefoot, still in work clothes, staring out the window. The city lights blinked like stars. Traffic moved in silent streams. And all I could think was, they're going to find out, but not yet. Let them keep their heads high. Let them feel untouchable. I wanted them confident, arrogant. That's when people make mistakes. So I stayed quiet. In meetings, I nodded at Tyler's awful ideas. I even helped him fix his Q3 numbers after he tanked a deal in Atlanta. That won me a thank you email and a gift card to a steakhouse. Meanwhile, my lawyer filed the restructuring proposal under Emily's corporate vehicle. It was clean, legal, lethal, and it only required 4 board votes to pass. Guess how many I had? 5. The night before the vote, I couldn't sleep. I played every scenario in my head. Would Greg fight it? Would the CEO try to block me? Would they realize it was me pulling the strings? At 8 a.m., I walked into the boardroom like nothing had changed. Tyler was already there bragging about some fishing trip with the new CFO. Greg nodded at me, casually. The meeting began, and then the proposal was read aloud. It was short, direct. A motion to restructure the board, reduce inactive seats, reassign executive voting rights, and reevaluate leadership roles in alignment with shareholder priorities. There was a moment of silence. Greg looked around, then asked, who initiated this? Emily's name was on the document. But I looked him in the eyes, calm, steady, and said, I support it. The vote happened. 5 hands went up. 2 didn't, and just like that, it passed. Tyler sat frozen. Greg looked like he'd swallowed glass. But I finally exhaled. After the meeting, I walked past Tyler without a word. He muttered something, maybe my name, maybe a curse. I didn't care, because now the game was mine. It's strange how quiet a victory can feel. No applause, no champagne, no one even said congratulations. But I didn't need noise, because power doesn't scream. It whispers like from the top floor. The morning after the vote, the corporate world went on as if nothing had happened. Emails still came in, meetings were still scheduled, but the air had shifted. Tyler avoided my gaze. Greg didn't show up to the 10 or check-in. The CEO radio silent, but I didn't wait. I had already submitted the proposal for a new executive structure. It included 3 key components. 1. Eliminate redundancy. Translation goodbye, Tyler. 2. Elevate strategic roles. Translation hello, me. 3. Require quarterly reviews of all C-suite performance metrics, with accountability clauses. That last one, it was the nail in the coffin for anyone coasting on connections. That afternoon, I received a call from legal. We'll need your signature to finalize the restructuring, the voice said. I signed digitally, with the same hand they once used to pat my head and say, "Someday, Danielle." Someday had arrived, but I wasn't done, because titles are temporary. Power is paperwork. I requested a full audit of departmental budgets. Tyler's division was bleeding money, lavish retreats, inflated vendor contracts, travel expenses with no receipts. I documented every line. Then I sent a report to Greg. No commentary, no threats, just facts. An hour later, his assistant messaged me. Greg has stepped down effective immediately. You'll be contacted by the board. I closed the message, no smile, just breath. For the first time in years, I felt still, but not satisfied. You see, I wasn't just trying to survive Bridgeford anymore. I was rebuilding it from the inside. I spent the next week meeting with every department head, one by one, not to interrogate, to listen. And what I heard was worse than I expected. People were scared, overworked, ignored. The culture I thought I knew, it was a shell. Polished on the outside, hollow underneath. So I changed that too. First, I reinstated the leadership development program that Greg had slashed. Second, I implemented anonymous reporting tools for internal concerns. Third, and most importantly, I met with the board again. This time, face to face. I walked into the room in a fitted navy dress, hair tied back, a stack of folders in hand. I didn't shake hands. I got straight to it. I'm not here to ask for approval. I said, I'm here to show you what your company can become if we stop playing favorites and start building systems that reward performance. I laid out a 12-month turnaround plan. They asked 2 questions. I answered with data. Then I left. 3 days later, I was named Chief Executive Strategist. Not acting, not interim, permanent. And guess what room they gave me? The corner office Greg used to lock when I passed by. Now I had the keys. I redecorated, not with gold plaques or marble desks. I hung one frame. Inside was a printout of the announcement email that gave Tyler the promotion, a reminder of where I started and how far I had come. But the real twist was still ahead, because a month into my new role, I got an email from our biggest investor. He wanted a meeting, said he'd been watching closely. We met in a quiet suite overlooking the Potomac River. He poured 2 glasses of whiskey. I didn't touch mine. Danielle, he said, you move like a ghost, quiet, strategic, effective. I like that. Then he slid a folder across the table. Inside, a proposal. He wanted to sell his stake in another firm, a firm much larger than Bridgeford, and he wanted me to run it. You've proven you can turn a sinking ship, he said. This one's not sinking yet, but it needs a new captain. I looked him dead in the eye. I'm not finished here, he smiled. Then finish, and call me. That night, I sat in my office, lights dimmed, rain tapping the windows, and I realized everything they tried to block me from becoming, I had become anyway, not by begging, not by waiting, but by understanding how power moves, and then moving faster. I sent one final email before I left that night. It was to the company every employee. Subject what comes next. It read, effective immediately. Promotions will be based solely on performance metrics and peer reviews. All employees will receive quarterly feedback and access to leadership training. No more favorites, no more secrets. Let's build something real. I hit send, then I closed my laptop and walked out into the storm. The next morning, my inbox exploded. Replies from every department. Some were cautious, some emotional, but most of them hopeful. I've been waiting for this for years. Finally, someone who sees us. Thank you for giving us a chance to grow. That was the moment I knew this wasn't just revenge. This was restoration. Of dignity, of fairness, of leadership that actually meant something. But not everyone was thrilled. Tyler filed a formal complaint, claimed I'd manipulated the board. It was ironic, coming from a man who once tried to get promoted over lunch with the CEO's cousin. I didn't respond. HR did. They conducted a full review. Turns out Tyler's complaint included falsified statements. He forged a timestamp on one of the memos he submitted. He was escorted out the next morning. No party, no farewell email, just silence. Exactly the kind he left me with. And yet, I didn't feel triumphant. I felt clear. Justice isn't always loud. Sometimes it's a locked door and a security badge that no longer works. As for Greg, he resurfaced 3 weeks later. He sent me a text. Lunch. I stared at it for a full minute before deleting it. I didn't need closure. I was building legacy. 2 months into my role, productivity was up 18%. Staff turnover dropped. And we closed the biggest deal in Bridgeford history with me at the negotiation table. No handshakes in the shadows. No golf clubs. Just performance. And people. I walked the floors every Friday. No assistants, no filters. Just me. Checking in. Listening. Remembering what it felt like to be invisible. They saw me now. Not because I demanded it, but because I'd earned it. Every nod. Every whispered thank you. Every glance that said, finally. I became what they never saw coming. Not a title. A force. You'd think after everything, after taking down the old guard, reshaping the structure, and claiming a seat they said I'd never reach, I'd feel finished. But I didn't, because success isn't the summit, it's the scaffolding. And I knew deep down there were still people like me in that company. People being overlooked, dismissed, used. So I started watching, not with suspicion, with clarity. In the months following the restructure, I began to notice a new pattern. There were pockets of resistance directors who missed the old way of doing things. Private lunches, insider deals, back channels. I wasn't shocked. Change doesn't erase the past, it exposes it. And what you expose, you can dismantle. So I created a second team. Internal, quiet, strategic. We weren't just looking at performance metrics. We were tracking culture. Anonymous interviews, digital sentiment reviews, Slack channel audits. And we found them. 4 directors who actively sabotaged team members they felt threatened by. One had blocked an entire department's raise submission for budget reasons, while approving a conference trip to Miami for himself and 2 friends. Another manipulated project timelines so his department always looked fastest. When I confronted him, he said, "It's just how this game is played." I looked him in the eye and said quietly, but clearly, "This isn't a game, and if it was, you just lost." He was gone by the end of the week. No big announcement, no drama, just one less relic poisoning the structure. But for everyone I removed, I made sure to elevate someone honest in return. One of them was Aisha, an analyst from a satellite office who uncovered a data breach before it hit PR. She had no one backing her, no mentor, no visibility, but she had integrity. And when I brought her in to lead a regional team, she cried, not because she wanted power, because someone finally saw her. That's the legacy I was building, not dominance. Awareness. Meanwhile, the investor from the Potomac meeting hadn't gone away. He emailed me again, this time with details. The company he wanted me to run was called Lark & Holt, a global consulting firm with over 2,000 employees spread across 5 continents. Revenue was strong, but morale was collapsing. 3 executives had resigned in under a year. Turnover was spiking, whispers of fraud. He offered me complete authority, no board interference. I told him I'd think about it. And I did, every night. But the deeper I thought, the clearer it became. I didn't want to abandon what I'd built. Not yet. Bridgeford wasn't perfect, but it was mine. I'd carved it from rot, rewired it from shadow. And I wasn't ready to hand it off to someone who didn't know the battle it took to get here. So I wrote him back. Not now, but maybe soon. He replied with a single line. I'll wait. But the world doesn't wait. And mine was about to shift. One Thursday morning, I received an envelope. No return address, no digital copy. Inside, a single sheet of paper. A whistleblower letter. Anonymous. It said a senior partner had been quietly funneling company funds to a shell LLC. Estimated diversion $2.8 million over 3 years. And the name at the center of it, Tyler Graves? Apparently being fired didn't mean he'd disappeared. He'd stayed close, used old contacts, old passwords, and now he was bleeding the company from the outside. At first, I felt rage. Then I felt something colder. Focus. I activated the audit team. We traced the payments, matched the accounts, and identified the shell firm. It was registered to a P.O. box in Maryland. The signature on the registration, his cousin. We involved legal, and then I made the call, not to Tyler, to the district attorney. By the time the police reached his apartment, he was already trying to board a flight to Mexico. They arrested him at the gate, and I attended my next staff meeting like usual. Only this time, I told the team the truth. That fraud had been committed, that justice was being served, and that transparency would define our future. Not fear, not shame, just clarity. The room didn't erupt, but there was a kind of stillness. Like everyone finally felt the floor beneath them was solid. That afternoon, I sat alone in the office. No lights, no noise, just me. And I realized I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't fighting to prove I belonged. I was proving what leadership looks like when it's earned, not handed down. When it's forged, not gifted. And as I stared out the window, watching the skyline stretch toward evening, I didn't feel tired. I felt ready. Because legacy isn't just about what you build, it's about what you protect. And I was just getting started. The Tyler situation made headlines. Local news picked it up. Then a finance blog. Then a national outlet. Bridgeford's name trended for 48 hours. Not because we failed, but because we responded. Quickly, transparently, without spin. For the first time in years, we were seen as a company that stood for something. That weekend, I hosted a leadership summit. Not in some overpriced hotel. In our own headquarters. No fancy banners, no keynotes. Just chairs in a circle. I sat with every department lead. No titles, no hierarchy. Just questions. What's working, what's broken, what are you afraid to say out loud? Some answers stung, but every word mattered. Because the people closest to the problem usually carry the solutions. At the end of the summit, I made one promise. I don't care how things have been done. I care that we do them right. And something shifted. Not in policies. In people, they started speaking up more, solving faster, supporting each other. The culture changed. Not because of rules, because of trust. 3 weeks later, I received another envelope. This time from the investor. It wasn't another offer. It was a handwritten note. Leadership doesn't shine in the spotlight. It glows in the dark. You're glowing. When you're ready, any company would be lucky to have you. But I get it now. Bridgeford's lucky to have you first. I read it twice. Then I folded it into my desk drawer, right next to that old promotion email. One reminded me where I came from. The other, why I stayed. Legacy isn't about the spotlight. It's about the shadows you clean up when no one's looking. A year after the vote after the title, the restructure, the scandals, I stood at the top of Bridgeford's headquarters. 27 floors up, glass walls, marble floors. I looked down at the city that once ignored me, and I didn't feel taller. I felt responsible, because power isn't a trophy, it's a mirror, and what you do with it shows you exactly who you are. So I asked myself, what kind of mirror was I holding? That question led to something bold. We launched a company-wide audit on us. Culture, hiring practices, pay equity, it ruffled feathers. But I told my team if we claim to be different, then we need to prove it, even when it's inconvenient. The findings were tough. Women in tech roles were underpaid by an average of 8%. Black and Latino employees had slower promotion trajectories. Some departments had never even conducted a bias review. I didn't issue an apology statement. I issued change. Salaries were adjusted retroactively. Promotion policies were rewritten. And every manager at Bridgeford, from interns to VPs, was required to complete a new leadership course called Power with Purpose. It wasn't performative. It was personal. Because I remembered every hallway I walked through, unheard. Every conference room I was talked over. Every backhanded compliment disguised as advice. You're good at this, for a woman. You should smile more when you present. Just be patient. Your time will come. It didn't come. I built it. And now I was building space for others to do the same. One afternoon, I was reviewing a budget proposal when my assistant buzzed in. There's someone here to see you. Says she doesn't have an appointment, but she asked for you by name. I raised an eyebrow. Who is it? A girl, about 19, says she met you at a community event months ago. I told her to send her in. She walked in nervous, hands tucked into the sleeves of a denim jacket. I'm sorry, she said. I shouldn't have come without an email or something, but I didn't know who else to ask. I nodded slowly. You're here now. Sit. She sat across from me, eyes wide, voice trembling. I want to be you, she said. That stopped me. I mean, I want to do what you do. I've never seen someone like me lead something like this. And when you spoke at that panel, it was the first time I thought maybe I could be more than where I came from. I didn't say anything at first, because I knew that girl. I was that girl. So I reached into my drawer, pulled out a card, wrote my private contact, and said, start here. I'll mentor you. But only if you promise me one thing. She nodded. Don't chase power, chase purpose. Power will follow. She smiled. And I saw it, the spark. The one no one saw in me until it was too late to stop me. That night, I stayed late. Not out of habit, out of choice. I walked through the office empty, quiet, peaceful, and I thought about everything. Tyler, Greg, the board, the tears I didn't cry, the screams I swallowed, the nights I stayed when I should have left. And still, I wouldn't change a thing. Because sometimes, the only way to break a system is to outlive it. I reached my office again, looked at the 2 framed papers on the shelf, the old promotion email and the handwritten note from the investor. 2 moments, 2 worlds. And I'd walked through both. The next morning, I got a message from the same investor. Subject line, it's time. He'd just acquired a controlling share in a global firm based in London. They were hemorrhaging leadership. He wanted me to take over. Start a new era, not as CEO, as chairwoman of the board. My heart stopped for a moment, not from fear, from awe, because this time, they weren't offering me a seat. They were handing me the table. I closed the email, looked out at the city one last time, and I thought, maybe legacy isn't about staying. Maybe it's about proving you could and knowing when to rise higher. So I picked up the phone and said 3 words I never thought I'd get to say. I'm ready now. Before I replied to that email, I walked into our main hall. The sun was streaming through the windows, catching the gold etching on our mission statement. Words I had rewritten myself. Earned, not inherited. Built, not borrowed. I touched the wall, just briefly. A quiet thank you to everything, to every version of me that kept walking. Then I returned to my desk and began my final act. I drafted a transition plan. Comprehensive, transparent, empowering. I wasn't just stepping down. I was pulling someone else forward. I nominated Aisha to succeed me as chief executive strategist. I'd already trained her. She didn't know that, but I had. Every decision, every briefing, every strategy session, I'd looped her in. She was ready. When I told her, she froze. Then tears welled in her eyes. But she started. I stopped her. No, you're not just anything. You're the future. And I meant it. I spent the next 2 weeks closing loops, handing over systems, clearing the path for her, not just to survive in the role, but to own it. And when the day came, I didn't hold a party. No champagne. Just one final meeting. I walked into the same conference room where I was once ignored. But this time, I stood at the head, and I said, I'm not leaving because I'm finished. I'm leaving because I've done what I came here to do. This place doesn't need a hero. It needs 100 voices that believe in better. Then I handed Aisha the keycard and walked out. Down the elevator, out the building, into the light. My car was waiting. So was a ticket to London. But I didn't rush. I stood on the sidewalk a moment longer, breathed, laughed, and whispered. They said I'd never make it. But I didn't just make it. I rewrote what making it looks like.